be starting the work session here. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there is generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. Welcome. We'll go ahead and start with our county manager's update, and Don Boone.
Thank you, Chair Cuellar, members of the board. Good morning. It's good to be back in the office. Thanks for all your support as my wife has been going through some cancer treatments and surgery, so thank you. I did want to refer back to the Friday update. You may have seen an entry in there that talked about some potential legislation that would create 5 pilot coordinated efforts around homelessness throughout the state. And what this really is to trying to get cities and counties and other partners that are working with the homeless population to really coordinate efforts in a more formal basis. A lot of that is happening within Clatsop County to the to the credit of the cities and the county, but as we all know, it's not always resourced at the way we would like. And so by participating, or at least expressing interest in participating as one of these 5 pilot areas, would provide the county some of those resources to actually fortify the efforts that have been ongoing. So what we are asking the board is, would you feel comfortable having the county express interest to being one of those pilots? We have discussed this with some of the cities we have been partnering with. It seems like it's probably a pretty good nexus with the work that is already being done. And so it does have some requirements on the backside, which is it's a 2-year funding of about $1 million. And then there would need to be a commitment from the participating agencies to then figure out a plan to keep the effort sustainable and moving forward. So, but we think we can make that happen. So just wanted to get your thoughts and feelings about it and see if you would be comfortable with the county at least expressing interest. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It has to go through the legislative process, but City of Seaside, Astoria, and the county are already actively working on these issues. So
I see that Commissioner Thompson had a question. Commissioner Thompson?
I just want to say absolutely yes. That's all. Please, let's go forward together, formally funded and continuing. Thank you.
Commissioner Toyoka?
Again, I'm on board. As part of my liaison report, I'll just kind of skip right now just to address this. I traveled into Seaside, like the 12th Street Park. I don't know if anybody's familiar. I had some people call me about that. They've got a lot of, RVs, transient living in that area. And, the neighborhood and the people are not happy because, the raw sewage from the RVs and the vehicles, the needles, kids are afraid to go to the park, not a safe environment. So I think this just amplifies the need to, to have a different program, have a long-term plan, and we've talked about with the Veteran Affairs Officer having the, camp. We've talked about a homeless camp where we could provide services, provide many homes. I think this is our vehicle in our time to enact something like that. A lot of the actions, we take sometimes are more enabling. And I think this will allow us to take more of a step that will help people, get out of the homeless issue, get out of those, if they have facilities and services available, we're helping people, assist them to get out of the situation instead of enabling them continuing in that situation. So I think this is, county manager, is a positive step, all for it. And I can't wait to see us, progress further, and alleviate some of these stopgap measures. Thank you.
Chair Cuellar, if I might, Commissioner Toyoka, what I would say too, and just to kind of reinforce what you said, is that one thing we have realized is that, the county cannot do this work alone, because the cities, just the geographical boundaries of the cities and the population center of the cities they have to be an active partner with us as we look at solutions. And so I think having staff and some of the support structure around them, that's going to be critical for us really moving this forward. Because what people often say is, well, what is the county or what is the city doing? And there's very little we can do without each other. So I agree with that. And I think this would be very helpful in us solidifying that.
Before I go to Commissioner Banks, have we heard from Commissioner Webb? I was just curious if Teresa or Dawn, if you heard from Commissioner Webb, if she's going to be joining us.
I have not, but I'll go ahead and give her a call.
And I also have not, Chair Coelho.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Banks.
I am all for expressing interest moving forward, and if legislation goes through, I'd like to circle back and just see what it looks like for us before we jump in with both feet. Just I err on the side of caution and make sure that it's something that we can feasibly do as a community. I know that we all have the heart to do everything that we can to assist our houseless situation for folks, but just making sure that we are that it is feasible for us, because what's feasible for larger counties may not be feasible for us. So just erring on the side of caution. But I agree with Commissioner Toyoka in that, anything that we can do, especially if we can get some assistance from the state in organizing our communities and the county all on one page, just trying to help folks. I think that'll be great.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I have been working with Seaside City Councilor Tita Montero on the houseless issue. I've been working with Seaside City Council President and Councilor Steve Wright on the issue of affordable housing. It's all a complex and it's a spectrum. And of course it has to be, it has to pencil out. It has to be financially prudent. Hearing the concerns of the Seaside neighbors, this is a problem that has to be addressed in a way that is responsible, is empowering, and there are real consequences because we're dealing with the consequences now. So I applaud the county manager for bringing this up and for going forward. What I'm very interested in doing is coordinating the work of the board and the staff. It isn't just cities and counties working together. Of course, that has to happen, but for involved and effective commissioners to be able to integrate with involved and effective staff, that's where the maximum benefit for the community is. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I would add my support as well for this. I think the community is begging for it. They want us to be pursuing options like this. And I'd also like to reach out to Warrenton. I know that it's becoming an increasing issue in Warrenton as well. Might not be the downtown area that's impacted, but there are certain property owners that have dealt with this for years, and it's becoming an increasing issue. So I think that we can make this overture to them as well. But I definitely think this is something we should be pursuing. Any other comments, questions, County Manager?
No, that's it for me. So if there's any other questions from the board, but that's the end of my update. So.
Okay, Teresa?
This is Teresa. I just wanted to let you know, Commissioner Webb is having technical difficulties and she is trying to join the meeting.
I think she just arrived, so hi, Commissioner. Okay. If we don't have any other reports, we'll go ahead and move right into the topics, which is number one, the American Rescue Plan Act monies. Page 3 of the agenda. We've got 15 minutes slotted for this. And Monica, are you going to do the report on this, or County Manager? County Manager.
Well, Chair Coelho, members of the board, what I might do is just give a little introduction, and then I'll let Monica run with it. Of course, Monica and I haven't had a chance to actually talk about how we're going to hand this off between us, but I do want to harken back. Actually goes back to when I think it was my first year here, where we had contributed resources to some of those essential not-for-profits that are providing services that really impact the county and the services we provide, and the absence of them providing those essential services actually creates a burden and some inefficiencies on how the county provides those continuum of services within the health and human services type of an umbrella. And so at the time, we were really funding the bread and butter infrastructure of these nonprofit organizations that would allow them to really use their resources for services. Because as I know, each of you that talk to the executive directors of whether it's community action or whether it's Helping Hands or the warming shelter, is that they all know, you know, where their needs are and where their deficiencies are. And so what we have been talking about is how best to really direct some of these ARPA dollars in a way that does not create a kind of an ongoing dependency, but does provide them with some flexible resources to help them through this very difficult time that we are still in, which is the pandemic. And so Monica and I put together this staff report to kind of outline what that strategy would look like, knowing that, you know, these investments would be made over a 3-year period, 3.5 years. And so I'll let Monica kind of walk through that in a little bit more detail, and then we'll be available to answer any of your questions.
Sure, thanks, Don. So as we had previously mentioned, whenever we're talking about the ARPA monies, we're planning to come before you with each of these individual asks. And this ask falls under that social services component. And so for this first year, we had set aside $320,000 for a navigation center, a warming center, and then other social service support. And so we're proposing for the current fiscal year allocating $270,000 of that 320, holding back 50 as kind of a contingency should something else come up. And in your packet, we broke out what it is that we're proposing. And so as you all may be aware, Lifeboat Services, which is a combination of Filling Empty Bellies and Beacon Clubhouse, have opened up on Commercial Street in Astoria. And their focus is to operate as a navigation center and eventually also be able to provide a warming shelter component as well, but that's down the road. So at this point in time, staff is proposing for a navigation center to allocate $35,000 to them. This would go, as Dawn mentioned, based on that funding concept to help with some of those larger capital infrastructure costs. For those who aren't aware, Helping Hands is also working with CCA and the Sunset Parks and Rec District, Sunset Transportation District, and they're also looking to open up a navigation center and warming shelter in Seaside. And for those of you who are familiar with where Helping Hands originally started, it's a location at the south end of Seaside. That is where they will be opening up this location. They're opening it back up as well for that navigation and warming shelter component. So as I mentioned, for the navigation center, it's a total of $70,000, $35,000 to each of those two agencies. For the emergency shelter support system, we're proposing $100,000. That would be broken up, $20,000 to the Astoria warming shelter, $20,000 to the harbor, which helps for emergency shelter for our domestic violence victims, and then $60,000 for Helping Hands, and that would be for their warming shelter location that they're opening in Seaside, as well as the emergency shelter location that they have here in Astoria. And then the final one for other nonprofit is a total of $100,000, and we're proposing that that be allocated to Clatsop Community Action for the variety of programs, social service programs that they provide there, whether it's rental assistance, energy assistance, food assistance, as well as the assistance that they are providing through for the unhoused population. And so if the board approves this funding concept, we would then create individual contracts with each of these agencies for these services for this current fiscal year. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have about any of these programs or amounts.
Chair Coelho, if I just might add really quickly, just on what Monica just referred to, the process, if your board is agreeable to this concept, is that each one of those individual contracts will come back to your board. And so if you give us the okay, we will negotiate those, and then each of those will come back to you for final approval.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, thank you, County Manager, and thank you, Assistant County Manager. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hearkened to your point about Warrenton, and I'm all for Seaside and Astoria. I think the allocation is very sensible. Commissioner Coelho, not to put you or staff on the spot, but are you comfortable that all of the areas of need will be addressed, considering what you just said about Warrenton?
I can't see a organization that kind of parallels these others. I think Clatsop Community Action is the overarching organization, and I think that they do so much within the entire county that I think that that's probably that will also benefit Warrenton, having that money go to Clatsop Community Action.
And Chair Coelho, if I might, what I would also add is that we are setting aside that $50,000 that if something comes up and there's another entity in another geographic area, or there's a unknown need with one of these organizations, your board would have the flexibility to make those allocations during the year also. So.
And I'll certainly do that outreach as well to see if there is something that I'm not aware of, or an organization that does a similar, provides a similar service. Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. Betsy Emery, Senator Merkley's aide, asked us for an estimation of what we were doing with our money. And so I could forward this wonderful iteration of what we're about to her. Very impressive. Well done, staff. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, then that will come back to us when those contracts are prepared. And I'm glad we're making progress. And I agree with Commissioner Thompson's statement. I think that we've been very thoughtful about and methodical about this process and how these Rescue Act monies are going to be allocated. So we will move on to Strategic Facility Plan, which is on page 11. And David is with us, and I think he'll start this off.
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me okay? This is the start of our strategic facility plan. We've been so far the last few weeks getting information to Sarah Architects, from floor plans and data on our personnel and everything. And this week we are also starting meetings. There'll be in-face meetings with all the departments between this week and next week. But to start it off, we wanted to get feedback from the board on what their vision of this plan is and provide us that information. So Becky from Sarah Architects is on the call here. If you would like to have any questions, you can ask Becky.
David, Becky, is it okay if I say a few words beforehand, David?
Sure.
Chair Coelho, is that okay? So just to set up this conversation, strategic planning for facilities is really vital. And one is to meet current needs. So we have some deficiencies within our current facilities. And then we also have to be looking forward into the future to see what different drivers might be influencing how we provide services, where we provide services, and then the different vehicles to actually do that. And as we all know, technology continues to really influence how we do business, and the public sector is not immune to that, nor should we be. But what we also know is that geographically, travel becomes more difficult during certain times of the year, more so than others. And if our goal is to provide services to everybody and to have accessible services, then we need to really talk about what that future looks like and what are the considerations that your board would like to influence the real guiding of this process. And so we're really interested in some of those, foundational goals you might have as we look into the future. We want to provide good facilities for our staff, because facilities is one of the drivers of morale for the organization. We want to have safe facilities. We'd like to have energy efficient facilities. And of course, our buildings right now, some are older, some are newer. And Sarah's going to help us gauge, all of that, and then help us bridge into the future. But having your input about goals when it comes to facilities, locations, geography is really important. So I'll kick it off to Becky to have her provide any additional referencing. So thanks, Becky.
I can't hear you, Becky.
Can't hear.
Becky, your green light's on, but we can't hear you. What you might have to do is call in on your phone. So sorry. Or if you just want to speak, and I'll try to interpret what you're saying. Teresa, can you maybe send the number to Becky? Becky, do you have the number? Okay.
It should be on the invite.
Okay.
I just want to appreciate the clerk of the board and the senior administrative supervisor for sending those very robust links. It makes my life possible. Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
While we're waiting for Becky, does anybody have any questions about county managers and David? I see Commissioner Thompson, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, I think this is just such an excellent idea and so essential to going forward as a capable organization. Becky, whenever you're on and audible, I'm happy to stop talking, but I don't hear you yet, so I'm going to keep talking. All right, not to waste time. All right, so it's important for our customers. That's everybody who pays taxes or uses county services. It's important for the staff. It's important for the commissioner. I want all of us to have access, and that means what you're doing is essential. As a commissioner, I am longing for an office. I am longing for a place where I can have a desk and a computer, where I can have reliable internet and electricity. I'm down at the capillary end of the system, and so I have to chase power and internet connections. I've been talking with the county manager about that. I don't know how my more urban colleagues feel. I need more support, and I need it now. So yes, going forward, and yes, immediately, just speaking personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Becky, do we have you yet? No. Just kind of reading over the report, and David might be able to answer. So, and I know that this is part of what we're looking at, but we're looking at 3 different tiers there. Short term, so the short term, the 1 to 2 years, and then cycle 1 is the midterm, 3 to 5 years, and the 6 to 10 years, and then we're going all the way out for long term of 11 to 20 years. So we're really looking at a long phase here of growth and what the needs are going to be for each department. So it's a comprehensive task that we're undertaking here.
And so, you can go ahead, Monica, please.
Sure. So I know that one of the topics that Becky wanted to address with you as a board is we're, like David mentioned, we're getting ready to start having these conversations with the staff, kind of in regards to what are some of the efficiencies that your department has right now? What are some of the barriers to those efficiencies that you are facing? And kind of long-term, what are you seeing as the growth for your department? What are some of the departments that you work closely with that you need to be able to have that ease of interaction with? So those are the conversations that we're going to be having in the next couple weeks with staff. But what Becky also and her team also want to know from you is, as a board, kind of to Commissioner Thompson's point, is what are some of the current service delivery models? What delivery changes do you as a board foresee over the next 10 years? So kind of speaking to that timetable that Commissioner Quila just referenced, is some of those immediate things that are more feasible for us to address, and then some of those longer term items over the next 10 years that we'll have to secure funding for to be able to address. And so I don't know if Commissioner Quila, if you want to kind of call on the board as Commissioner Thompson addressed, and if she has more to address, to kind of each be able to briefly explain some of the things that you all have easily identified right now.
Yeah, I'll let the rest of the commission. It just, to me, it's the departments themselves that will be able to identify than I can. And that would be the driver for me. Commissioner Bangs just had her hand up.
I follow that statement that I feel like the departments will know best on how their facilities should be like moving forward. I think the only comment that I have, and it comes from, you know, personal life visiting public facilities or public entities, is that when we do so, that like our bathrooms are easily accessible by families. I feel like we are kind of stuck in the dark ages here in Clatsop County a bit. They're in the past, and I can't say now because I don't have any babies anymore, but in the past there have been no changing stations in the men's bathroom. There have been no ability for a man to take their baby into the bathroom. and as my husband has had to take his daughters into the men's bathroom, that's uncomfortable. And so there's very few family-oriented bathrooms available in our county facilities. At least there were when our children were young. And I'm sure a county manager could attest to what our current status is, but when my children were young, we were just kind of stuck in the manner of the past, I guess. And so I would really like to be able to look at our public facilities and upgrade them so that it's honoring more of a traditional, well, I guess it's less traditional, more modern family or a more modern person. I think everybody can kind of track where I'm going here. I just, you know, it's along the lines of ADA compliance. I feel like we need to have more compliance, be more with the times, I guess, than what our current buildings are. And that's just, you know, in our public facilities. And then again, our departments will know best on what they need.
And Chair Quayla, Commissioner Bangs, if I might, I think that an assessment of our current facilities, or I don't think, an assessment of our current facilities is part of what we will be doing. So we'll be looking at those public facilities like restrooms and evaluating them, because that is an important point, is that our facilities need to be relevant to the communities we serve. And that's part of our relevance to the community and how we are either more effective or less effective. And I think what we always choose is we kind of choose what, where our challenges are. And I think we don't want our facilities to be a challenge for the efficient and effective delivery of service or access to our services. So that certainly will be one of them, and that is an important factor. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, County Manager. And as impersonal and maybe an affront to customer service as it is, I think we've learned how security is so important, and of course having COVID barriers and protocols being able to be installed is so important. It's certainly going to be, I know, something that will be a focus of this, because life has changed quite a bit over over the span of a lot of these facilities. We'll have to, kind of accommodate. I saw that Commissioner Webb, and Becky, I think you are connected now.
So sorry.
Let's go ahead and just, Becky, I'll turn it over to you, and then I know that our commissioners have more questions and comments. So I'll turn it over to you, Becky.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. So we see this as the first touch point with you. And after we speak with staff, we'd like to come back here in another month or so and tell you what we heard and talk about what we're going to do with that information. So this is just the first conversation where we're asking for your feedback. So with that, let's continue and speak with each commissioner. Before we do that, though, you mentioned the security aspect with COVID, but what about security as you enter the different buildings? What are your challenges there? What are you hoping to achieve security-wise?
And I'll let an expert answer that question, but I know that, I'm working at a hospital. We've had to really alter the public entrance, limit access, unfortunately, from times, and be able to do so, to have an alternative plan in place so that when there are visitation changes or whatever, we've had to be able to put a plan in action and make it relatively easy to do so. And so, and I think that the community development director and the community development area, of course, had to put all of those glass partitions in for safety reasons, because it was wide open, and we knew that there was a hazard there, or a concern that you get irate people and that they our staff is vulnerable. So yeah, I know that there's a lot of issues that that David and others and our administration have identified and will continue to identify during the process. And then I'll let Commissioner Webb comment.
I just have a couple of questions. How is this project interfacing with the work that I thought was already underway about the courthouse? Is that a separate, is the courthouse redo, is that a separate issue, or will it be a part of this project?
Chair Quayla, Commissioner Webb, if I might answer that question. So they are two separate projects. One is looking at the single entrance of the courthouse, which is a collaborative effort with Sarah Architecture, as well as all, the state courts and DA's office and sheriff's office. And so that is on a parallel path, and that's going on right now. Certainly at the same time, though, we will be going into the courthouse and looking at the use of the spaces and the adequacy of the use of the spaces, which is a separate question than just the entrance. We're with the first project, which is the entrance security, we are really just looking at how do we create a single entrance so that we can have it be a secure entrance that people have to go through security to get into the building, which is what the courts really want. And that's what kind of the best practice is now. with courts. And but at the same time that is being addressed, which is a capital project, we're going to be looking at what is it, how is the space used now? Is it adequate? Are there adjacency issues? And then what does it look like in 5 and 10 years, given growth? So they are parallel, but they're also going to interact with each other, both projects.
Okay. My other question is about how we will one of the products here be some kind of an estimation of the needs, the physical needs and costs of investments in prolonging the life of our present buildings?
Yes, we will have that. Yeah.
And we'll have that so that it will be a projection for us of what our future investments are going to have to be in
Right.
maintenance. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So then you could compare, should we stay with what we have or do we build new? And building new, of course, has its own budgetary restraints as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And my other comment is that I hope that we can do a good job as we proceed with this about telling our constituents what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what the implications are for the future. That you know, I think we've learned recently that when we talk about facilities, we need to do it in a very careful and open and informed way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Toyoka?
Just a question, as you know, as I read through everything, I see that we're looking about utilization of the spaces, the physical conditions, but does it look to the, and as we look at these longer term looks, does it look at like resiliency, you know, especially for our area, interconnectivity between the sites, you know, will we still be able to communicate? Are all those factors looked at as well?
Yeah, we're going to look at all of those hazards, whether it's earthquake or flooding, wildfires, right? What those potential vulnerabilities would be between various sites. Yeah, we'll look at that in layers of how they would interact.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. I spoke personally before. I'd like to speak generally now. What I'm looking for is efficient and effective program delivery, certainly. I'm looking for accessibility for, I'm calling them customers, for staff, for commissioners. I'm looking for resilience. As Commissioner Toyoka says, people need to be safe now and going forward insofar as you're able to design for that. And the interconnectivity of all of it so that we have the functionality that's essential for going forward. When I see the limitations on broadband and the increasing appetite, I mean, it's exponential. Security as well, cybersecurity. For me, not just the physical security. Of course, we want our court people to be safe. We want to be safe. We want everybody coming to see us and coming to work to be safe. Cybersecurity is essential, as well as the physical aspects of security and accessibility. And post every catastrophic occurrence, I don't know how you do it, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other comments, questions? You're going to, you'll be doing kind of your listening and coming back to us then within a month? Okay.
So Chair Cradle, members of the board, we have a number of meetings with the department scheduled that are beginning on Friday. So this work will be really in earnest very quickly, and we will be circling back to your board after we get that preliminary look from the departments. So,
yeah,
sounds
thank you.
Great. Well, Becky. Any other questions, comments? We'll go ahead and we'll move on now to the comprehensive plan update. Goals 11, public facilities and services. And I'll turn it over to our community development director, Gail Henriksen.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. We're here today to talk to you about goals 11, 12, and 14, which cover public facilities and services, transportation, and urbanization. And since we have a limited amount of time, if the board would be willing, I would like to have the board review the goals in reverse order, and that way Julia and Ian can make sure that they have any questions and direction they needed, they can obtain that from the board. So would the board be in agreement with that?
Any objections? That sound good? Okay.
Thank you. So I will turn it over to Julia then.
Good morning, Commissioners. Julia Decker, Planning Manager, Community Development. So I'm starting with urbanization, which is goal 14, and the previous version, the original version really, had no narrative, really didn't describe the goal at all. It just had the information from the goal. And the statewide planning goal is to provide an orderly and efficient transition from rural to urban land use to accommodate urban population and urban employment inside urban growth boundaries, and to ensure efficient use of land, and to provide livable communities. And the counties was even more simple, to provide for an orderly and efficient transition from rural to urban land use. And so it had some policies, and those are all still germane. And then after that, several reams of urban growth management agreements and all of the amendments thereafter. And so I thought, well, perhaps we could add a little bit of narrative to that. And so I did try to do that. And I explained a few things, some concepts that didn't make it into the original, a definition and explanation of what an urban growth boundary is, some explanation about what exception areas are, and a little bit of information about rural communities. The county has 5, and those came about in 2002, 3, and then were finally adopted in 2004, which is kind of where I entered the department. And so that was kind of where I came into urbanization, and it was an exciting time in the department. We were doing all kinds of things. Short-term rentals hit the zoning code in Arch Cape, for example, so there was a lot of testimony about that. But we ended up adding rural communities to Clatsop County, and that's the rural areas outside urban growth boundaries. And so I added some explanation of those into this overview. And if you had an opportunity to read it, fabulous. If I need to make some changes there that would make it clearer, if you'd like me to take it out, that whatever you'd like is fine. I did have a couple of questions for you where I'm looking for a little bit of direction. We've talked about in housing on goal 10 that we have very, very limited area for in the rural areas for expansion of housing, and to do it probably would require expansion of urban growth boundaries by the cities, or taking additional exceptions to goals 3 and 4, and probably and 14, and probably 11, and possibly expanding rural community boundaries. At this point, there has been no discussion about it. Nobody has discussed it. So staff has absolutely no idea whether or not anybody is interested in this. We don't know how long it would take. We don't know how expensive it would be. We haven't discussed it with any of the cities. So the question for you from staff is, the board interested in exploring additional goal exceptions to expand existing exception areas to the rural lands designation, or working with rural community providers, such as water and sanitary districts, to expand rural community boundaries. I will point out up front that that includes so many concerns: water, sanitary, sewer. We don't know if we actually have capacity anywhere for any of that. Also, does the board wish to approach any of the cities on the topic of UGB expansion, and thereby potentially increasing area available for housing? So that was questions for you. A little bit of explanation about the objectives and the policies. Really, I would just, on the very final page, the one I wanted to bring to your attention is staff was looking at number 4, which says financial incentives should be provided to assist in maintaining the use and character of lands adjacent to urbanizable areas. But it doesn't say what financial incentives, and it doesn't say who should be providing them. So staff had proposed to take that out, but is looking for some direction from you on that as well. So that's very brief overview. Would love to hear questions.
I think Commissioner Banks had her hand up first. So Commissioner Banks.
I would say I am interested in the conversation or exploring. Let me pull it up on my screen again. Exploring additional goal exceptions, or potentially being able to expand areas in our rural lands designation. I know that, you know, recently something came in front of our board, and it would be nice just to be able to look into that and see if we have any wiggle room for further development in our rural communities, because as we all kind of notice, we're in a housing crisis and we're just kind of running out of space to put people, and people keep wanting to come, and jobs are keep opening, and I feel like that this would be a thoughtful way to just look into it and see if somehow we can assist. And then in regards to your sentence being struck from the document, I agree with the staff's assessment of striking that sentence. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Banks that there's a housing issue. I've been concerned about that for the past decade, so I'm delighted to have this conversation. I think it was brilliant of staff to put this first. I have a slightly different point of view. What I'm looking for is a systematic approach. I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about temporary urban areas. What we've seen since the original writing of the land use document is temporary surges of visitors in a tourist economy. We don't have data for that. We have data about where people are registered to vote, where they are permanently living. We need to have data about temporary urban areas. Sometimes people get so far as to be able to do heads and beds, you know, hotels, motels, transient occupancy. We also have visitors. So what we're dealing with in our communities is temporary urban areas. That doesn't, if it's there, I missed it. And I think it's essential that we articulate that and elevate its awareness and get data whenever possible. The second thing is, what I see is the need is for a transition along a spectrum from rural to rural community to some kind of legal jurisdiction, whether it's incorporation as a city, an HOA agreement, or special district elections, because we're looking at what can the land carry in terms of freshwater and wastewater. We're looking at fire protection. It isn't adequate, it isn't coordinated. When I look at my neighborhood, the city of Cannon Beach is distinct from Cannon Beach Rural Fire Protection District. And I've been in conversations with the board and the chief about the concerns, the adequacy or lack of it for the call outs. They're not getting through. There isn't adequate it's not coordinated. We don't have a plan. We don't have an overall view. This issue points to it. So Julie, I think you're really onto something. What I see, to echo Commissioner Webb's comment on the previous item, we need to have an engagement of our community that is, it can't be 2 years and revolving around a particular issue. It has to be broadly, how do we deal with change in ways that are legal and financially prudent and sound public policy? So with great respect for Commissioner Banks, I'm not looking to make exceptions. What I'm looking at is a system redesign that is updated and comprehensive so that we can give our people predictability about how to build houses, about where to have businesses, about how to conduct their lives. That's what I'm looking for, that spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Toyo.
Kind of echoing, very similar thoughts of the other two commissioners, but I do think we do need to have cities' participation. Kind of like County Manager said before, this is a regional solution, it's not isolated. So we cannot operate in a vacuum and then expect everyone else to have the same opinion. So I think the cities need to be on board right at the beginning. And then, because they'll know capacities, they'll know service availabilities, what can be done. On paper, it might look good that we can have an exception, or we might redefine an area for growth, but that may not be the case for that particular city and the services available. So I don't, as we look at, the need for housing, the need for expansion, it's not just the capacity of water, sewer, power. It's going to look at, what our services, police, fire, and we have to kind of have the cities on board so we do not operate in a vacuum. They're on board from day one, and I believe they need to be participating from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Webb, did you have any comments, questions?
Thank you, Chair Cuela. First of all, I'd like to commend the staff for their usual terrific work. This is for a part of our comp plan that hasn't really been touched in several decades. I think the staff work on this was really creative, and I think very, very much on point. Commissioner Thompson, I'm feeling that we're finally, after all these years, turning you into an articulate urban planner. And I completely agree with all of your comments. Actually, it's interesting because the county manager and I had a long discussion about this very issue on Monday, and I think it's time for a little bit more aggressive, in the best sense of the word, effort for us to outreach with our cities. Isn't it interesting that that every item on our agenda today has implications for how we work together with our cities and with our rural communities. So I think that the urbanization issue in Clatsop County, I think should be number one on our strategic plan, because there are so many interrelated issues concerning urbanization, and some of them are just smacking our heads right now, and we do need to deal with them. I think in terms of some of the specifics, I'm not a big fan of exception areas. To me, it kind of defies sort of the essence of what a community plan is. So I get a little nervous when we talk about exception areas. But I think it's something, I do feel it's very necessary for us also to talk about, look at what we're dealing with in Arch Cape right now in terms of the STRs. How different is Arch Cape from Svensson. You know, I think we've got to be laser focused on some of those emerging rural communities. I really feel that this is one of the most important parts of the comp plan. And I really applaud for the staff for asking very insightful questions. At the same time, I always get nervous about the bottom-up approach from our citizens. That's the essence of good planning in the state of Oregon. So I would love to have our a robust conversation with our area planning committees, advisory committees, and I think this is costly. I think that there are significant financial resources that need to be brought to bear that our planning, our development staff just doesn't have the hours in their days for. And so we might have to look elsewhere for some outside help in doing some of this work. But I think it's very, very urgent. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Tom.
Thank you, sir. So to Commissioner Toyoka's point about the cities and the county, yes, absolutely. I think every single special district in Clatsop County has to be involved with this. I think the school districts and the ESD have to be involved with this. In terms of citizen input, generally speaking, I've been an advocate for that. I can't even tell you, over long time. That's why my children played committee meeting, is because I was doing citizen input. What I've seen is that in some cases, the citizen input has not included enough voices. So I'm looking for a system redesign in the citizen input as well. I don't think we can do what I would call the same old, same old. Clatsop 2030, remember that? I don't think so. I don't think anybody who's on the board now was on the board then. I know I wasn't. I was a community activist, and I went to 6 of 7 of those sessions, listening sessions all over Clatsop County. We actually went out and listened to people. I think it's essential that we listen to people. I can't wait to get a robust public involvement process and a public information flow going. I'm looking forward to those developments. But this is great work, and the question we need to ask, I agree with Commissioner Webb, this should be number 1 on our list because we're seeing the impacts everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. And I agree, coordination amongst districts, coordination with cities is vital. Having a public communication or public input from our CACs is important. And it isn't that I don't have the reverence for the state land use laws. I do think you need to have exceptions, and I do think there are opportunities for urban growth boundary adjustments. There's been a lot of change in what rural lands and even lands within cities have been constrained, and how those, the buildable lands inventory has changed over the years, and it's often takes a while to kind of filter all the way up to the county, to the state. It's usually those property owners that find out they can't do what they thought they could do with their property, and then they're stuck. And I know that in Warrenton, just going back to Warrenton, I mean, I think that they're a city that really needs to have an urban growth boundary adjustment or a serious consideration of one, just because much of their property that is zoned for residential, industrial, commercial is constrained through wetlands. And that's something that needs to be addressed. And I certainly hope we can do our due diligence there, but then also to look at some of these other districts, whether it's water, sewer, or other regional kind of systems, and see if there's a better way to grant some exceptions and provide the services. I think that, the sewer example from Cullaby Lake is is a perfect example of why that should have had an exception. We should have been able to bring a lot more people onto that sewer line that ran all the way from Cullowhee Lake to Warrenton that we did, and we felt we were bound, and DLCD, bound us from including properties that now, are in need of, either putting new septic systems in or connecting their own parallel line to Warrenton's sewer district. I just think that there needs to be some flexibility. I'm for looking into that a little bit and just addressing some of these with a common sense approach. Anyway, and as far as the line, I think that line, as far as the financial incentives, I'm fine with that being taken out. Then what else, Julia? Was there something else that we needed to give you direction on?
Thank you, Chair Quila. No, I think I'm understanding that I will craft a goal or two, or a policy or two that says we're opening up these areas for exploration. And by, I don't mean the physical areas, I mean the concepts. We're opening these concepts up for exploration, and contacting the cities and all of these different service areas and getting the conversation started.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Julia. So can we move on to goal? Are we going backwards to goal 12?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, goal 12. And is that Ian? Hi, Ian.
Hey, good morning, Chair Quila and commissioners. Thank you. I'm Ian Sisson, Senior Planner, and I'll be presenting Goal 12 to you. Goal 12 is transportation, and the statewide planning goal, which is the same as the local goal, is to provide and encourage a safe, convenient, and economic transportation system. Goal 12 requires the county to have a transportation system plan that accounts for all modes of transportation. Goal 12 is implemented by the transportation planning rules, which are codified in the OARs in 660 Division 12. And essentially that outlines what is required to be in a transportation system plan and how to go about that process. Aviation planning is also required as part of Goal 12 and is codified in Division 13. So Clatsop County's Goal 12 element was last updated in 2015, and that was in conjunction with our most recent TSP update. And it also resulted in some changes or updates to our zoning code. It's the long-term guide for county transportation improvements. So there's a project list, project cost information, responsibility for various projects, whether that's the state or the city or the county. The policies that we have in our Goal 12 element were derived directly from the transportation system plan. And I should mention that plan was devised with a 20-year planning horizon set to expire in 2035. And the plan itself was also adopted by reference into Goal 12. So I've reviewed the current policies that we have, and I don't see any significant updates that need to be made. Everything generally is an ongoing priority, which all still remain relevant and will remain relevant for the foreseeable future. So I've prepared a first draft of Goal 12, which is in your packets today, and it is the same exact language that we currently have in Goal 12. It's just with our new formatting that we've been using and the new layout. So essentially, the only questions that I have for you today are, recognizing that Goal 12 is something that goes hand in hand with the transportation system plan, and we're not due to update the transportation system plan for some time. Is the board interested in exploring any changes to any of the policies that we currently have in Goal 12, or are there any new policies that the board is interested in pursuing?
Mr. Webb?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. When I when I was going through this material, I actually pulled out the TSP, which was at hand because I had been taking a look at it in reference to what we're hoping will be significant federal infrastructure legislation. I think that we're in good shape. I think that the TSP is first of all, I think it's going to be useful in helping us get some of those needs funded. And secondly, I think that our Public Works Department is very, very on top of some of these strategic infrastructure needs. I just feel like goal 12 is done. You know, I think that the TSP must be one of our newest plans, right? I mean, we're dealing with a parks plan that's, 20 years old and all kinds of things, but the TSP is very solid. And I appreciate the formatting context that you have put on this, and it just looks very good to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ever since I've been on the commission, 2015, I have been Clatsop County's representative to Colpack and Northwest Act. Northwest Act is the Area Committee on Transportation. What I see is that when I go there, I'm not really fully equipped to represent Clatsop County the way I need to be, because there's a disconnect between the staff work and the commissioner liaison work. So I think what's written here is swell. I think the plan is swell. In my mind, what's lacking is the integration of my information base as I go forward to interact with ODOT staff and my colleagues around the region. So if we could work on that part of it, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other comments, Commissioner Toyo?
Yeah, just reading through, like, I know, was it 7C, it says identify the electric plug-in stations throughout. I would also suggest maybe we look at infrastructure for commercial. The most manufacturers for commercial vehicles are looking at either like LNG or hydrogen. So we could maybe potentially look at those as fuel sources to keep commercial transportation infrastructure available throughout the county as well. We still will need supplies, and I don't think they're going to go electric in the near future, but I think the stopgap for the larger is going to be either LNG or hydrogen in the near future. So maybe we can look into that. Be proactive on the infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Bangs? Okay. Yeah, I aside from Commissioner Toyoka's comments, I don't see any reason to explore changes. I think that this is good and sounds like the rest of the commission does as well.
Okay, thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Ian. And we'll move on to goal 11. And I'll turn it over to Gail Henriksen, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Commissioners. Goal 11 addresses public facilities and services, and the purpose of Goal 11 is to plan and develop a timely, orderly, and efficient arrangement of public facilities and services to serve as a framework for urban and rural development. And when we talk about public services and facilities, the reason that we're concerned about them and why they're addressed in our comprehensive plan is that these types of services and facilities can affect a community in two ways. First of all, the obvious one is the costs that are involved in financing what are large cost, big ticket items in terms of infrastructure. The second reason that we want to review them is that where you put facilities and services and the level of those facilities and services does influence land use patterns and development. And so that's why we are required to address them in our comprehensive plan. When we talk about public facilities and services, what statewide planning goal 11 calls out are water and sewer, police and fire, health services, recreation facilities, energy and communication services, and services that are provided by the local government, including permitting and public works. And so if you remember, we've talked about goal 8, which dealt with our recreational needs. And we're talking now a lot about urbanization, growth boundary expansion, transportation facilities. But we're very limited when it comes to expansion of water and sewer and how we can use that to increase or influence development. And we have a lot of restrictions on that. For example, in OAR 660-011-0060, as a local government over rural land, we are not allowed to expand new sewer systems outside of urban growth boundaries or outside of the unincorporated community boundaries unless there is some sort of public health hazard or we've taken an exception to goal 11. And Chair Quila touched on this when he talked about Cullowhee Lake and the need for the sewer system out there and that connection to Warrenton, but how we were very limited as a county to who could hook up to that pipe along the way between Warrenton and Cullowhee Lake. So we need to be mindful that there are going to be some restrictions on us when we look at public services such as public utilities. And here in Clatsop County, the only sanitary system that's operated by the county is the one that we have out in Westport, and that's maintained by our Public Works facility. With regard to water, we're restricted and governed by OAR, which is Oregon Administrative Rules 660-011-0065, which allows us to have a water system expand into the rural area. But when that happens, or when you have an existing water district, we cannot use that as the basis for, solely the basis for increasing density or allowing a higher density than we would normally allow if that water system were not there. And here, most of our water in unincorporated areas is either provided through the cities like Warrenton or through water districts like Wickiup, or alternatively through private wells and systems that are regulated and licensed through the state. So most of our fire districts are volunteer operated. We know that they encounter staffing issues at times because you have to be able to recruit and maintain and train volunteers. Funding issues are also a concern, whether that be for equipment or operations. And keeping in mind that many of our fire districts are supporting persons who don't actually live in their fire district or maybe even within the county, because those fire districts do provide services to the many thousands of tourists that come to Clatsop County throughout the year. And so that will tie into some other things that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. With regard to law enforcement, obviously the county runs a sheriff's office and the cities have their own independent police departments. But again, issues of recruitment and funding and making sure that they're staffed at the proper levels for the services that are required. So when we look at the public facilities and services in the county, I also looked at, in my draft of Goal 11, diking districts, even though they're not specifically called out in statewide planning Goal 11. And it's, I think, very important for us to consider those because we do have agricultural lands, we have industrial lands, we have residential lands that are currently protected by these dikes and the diking districts. However, some of those districts have gone defunct. Some of them are inactive, and there's a question about whether or not maintenance is being done, whether required repairs are being done. And so that's another thing that we need to keep in our minds as we're looking at these public facilities and services. Also, as we've talked about, or the board talked about earlier this morning, the need to coordinate with all our special districts. And here in Clatsop County, we have 54 of those special districts. And again, they all face a lot of the same challenges, being able to recruit board members, volunteers, having access to funds to maintain their capital assets. And so my policy question for you that I need some direction on is Goal 11 does call out specific facilities and services that we're supposed to look at, but are we also interested in looking at other facilities and services such as the diking districts? And then my second question would be, you have discussed this morning the need to coordinate and collaborate with the cities. And when we have rural fire districts, which are primarily volunteer operated, how do we support some of these special districts or special services that our county residents are benefiting from in the unincorporated areas? Or is that something that we should be working with the cities to really shift those services over more to cities and help them work with us? So that's the direction that I'm looking for today. What is the role of the county in supporting some of these special districts, such as fire and diking districts? So, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Commissioner Bang.
Okay, so in regard, I'm going to be short and sweet here, hopefully. In regards to how can the county, or should the county, what role should we have? I really feel like we should explore this. There are so many grant opportunities available, and I feel like with a primarily volunteer staff for many of these districts, looking into grant opportunities for them to get more funding, say it's a water district out in Napa, looking into grant opportunities for, you know, improving their pipes or so on and so forth, that if the county could possibly explore, you know, within our own grant writer that we have on how to open lines of communication. I really do feel like we need to have some open lines of communication among our special districts and ourselves, and to try to lend a helping hand. It doesn't have to be, you know, 7 staff members, but to try to lend a helping hand to lift up our small special districts. In regards to diking, this causes me some concern that we have some defunct districts, inactive districts. I would like us to explore that more and kind of translate into what is that impact going to be to our communities, to that inability to maintain these dikes. I feel like that's a very vulnerable thing that we need to be talking about, and that should be on our plate to somehow explore what avenues the county may be able to pursue in that area. And then I was just reading through this, and I would just say page 26 and 27 are a no for me. And I will just circle back to making sure that we remain unbiased, not validating one side or another, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, SMART goals. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Bangs. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regarding diking districts, absolutely. I've been raising this issue. I'm delighted that it's here on the page. I think we as a county need to look at that collaboration, coordination efforts, supporting appropriate other bodies whenever possible. I think it's all good on the positive side. When I look at page 26, what I see in the second paragraph is about the Falcon Cove Beach Domestic Water District. I have raised the issue before, and I will raise it again today. I'm calling for the deletion of the reference to the water moratorium. There were credible subject matter experts who were members of our community who soundly refuted and disputed the data used by the water district to impose the moratorium. I am not comfortable with the way the water district reacted to subject matter experts. If you've got a hydrologist, if you've got a professional drilling person, And what you do is refuse to give public notice or take public input in any except the most minimal of ways that doesn't inspire confidence. When the same people who operate on the water district also operate on the CAC and use their position there to reduce or refute community input that disagrees with their personal point of view, that's not a good use. And it's, again, the same people. When those same people use the county ordinance that gives recognition to local community organizations, and that is used, again, to forward a point of view and use common resources and public ordinance to basically to pit neighbor against neighbor and to operate in ways that suit their personal passionately held beliefs. I mean, I really respect the passionately held beliefs. I'm not comfortable with how our public processes have proceeded. I ask for this particular reference and other references to that water moratorium to be deleted. I am not convinced that it was valid. And I would point out to my colleagues, I can't even tell you how much time investigating oversight of special districts. Special districts are creatures of state law that exist so that specific essential community services can be provided. The oversight is twofold: the ballot box and the courtroom. So unless there is a preponderance of voters who have a problem with the way things are going and they turn out to vote, the district is empowered to do what it believes to be right, regardless of any other considerations. There's a real issue here, and I don't know how to address it. In the meantime, please remove, I'm asking, I don't know if my colleagues will support me on this. I don't want to be the only one who's telling staff to do this, but that water moratorium should not be cited in our document. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, excuse me, I just want to Commissioner Bangs to clarify. Your voice kind of broke off. You made a statement about pages 26 and 27. What was your comment about them? I'm sorry, I couldn't understand it.
My comment was, it's a no for me.
Oh, okay, thank you. Can you, I mean, can we discuss that? Okay.
Commissioner Toyo.
Well, I can elaborate on one portion, just talking to some people in our area on item 2, talking about initiating a moratorium on building homes with septic systems on less than 1 acre. We need to be, I guess, consistent in our policies in the county, because right now is, the same people, taxpayers or potential homeowners are looking at, some transient RV people dumping, human waste in a storm drain, and that's okay, but they can't build their home on their lot because it would be less than 1 acre. Very inconsistent there. So I think we have to address it, I think as a, regional solution. You have to look at this regionally and how it affects everyone and all the other implications of our other policies. So I would say no on a moratorium as well as far as septic on 1 acre, because I talked to the city manager. They haven't had any issues as far as for septic in Gerhardt. So if that's not an issue, why would we set a moratorium? So I need more data to say, why would you do that? Why would you implement a moratorium if we don't have the data to support it?
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. And I would just kind of going back, I think I really appreciate Director Henriksen including diking districts in this. This is so important for us, and to get a full assessment of how they're functioning and what the needs are, I think is crucial. I agree with Commissioner Thompson's point, I am wary as well about including something about Falcon Cove. We've heard on both sides of that issue, and whether or not something of a moratorium was just, depending on what was presented. And I also read about Warrenton. I was on the commission back when we were trying to find customers throughout and sell water to folks outside. And I know, things have changed, but there was a water study that was done, a regional water study that was done. And Peter Moore, who's now with Jordan Ramus, is a natural resource attorney, and I think he was involved in that. I don't know what firm he was with at the time, but I would rather have that be the driver, having someone, a consultant that actually can review what's available and take all of these factors into account, and make his recommendations on how to go forward, rather than just saying, well, we want an environmental action team to determine and give us a recommendation. I think you bring in a consultant that has a background in all of these areas and can really tell you what's available, what are the constraints and the restrictions, and then make that recommendation or give that report to us. I think that would be the most, I think, beneficial to me. Commissioner Banks, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to agree with you. I think bringing in an unbiased, neutral party into the discussion and to do, a water study or some such, so that we can base or assist folks in basing decisions off of. Anytime that any bias is displayed, I have a real negative reaction to it. And I feel like from a county contract or a county document position, we should have no room for bias in it. It should be a very neutral document. And so when we have conflicting comments, again, with Commissioner Thompson's alliteration of a conflicting situation, we should not put that into a public document and give one side validation. We should support our communities as a whole. And so as we move forward, I really agree with what you just stated in the water analysis, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a misunderstanding here about what, and incidentally, this is in our existing strategic plan. The environmental quality action team that was proposed was an effort to do just what has just been said, to do the kind of scientific analysis that needs to be done to understand especially the issue of water conditions. That's quality and quantity throughout the county. And I think that this was, I can't remember, when did we do this? A year or so ago, when we did the strategic plan for the board. This was intended to do just that, to do a greater in-depth study of what conditions really are. When we have, I think Commissioner Thompson's comments about the Falcon Cove water district are very, very well taken, because I think that all of the experts who I've talked to, the geologists and hydrologists and people like that, agreed that we lack good, solid data on so much of the natural resource issues relating to water in the county. And we have a number of activist watershed. The North Coast Watershed Alliance is I hope with some help from us is going to get a greater understanding of issues in the Big Creek area and throughout the county. We have already kind of started this work in several ways outside of the board, as I say, by watershed districts, et cetera. And the whole issue, this was intended to be able to do a much better analysis of what conditions truly are. Hopefully, if we can work with the AOC Community Solutions Group, which we're hoping to do, we're going to get some more help in funding some of this and in getting some good technical expertise brought to bear. Just yesterday at the meeting of the Planning Commission, they reviewed, help me out, Gail, I can't remember what goal they were working on. Their
Goal 6.
Goal 6, that's right, the water and
air, water and land quality.
Right. There was an enormous amount just from our volunteers on the Planning Commission. There was a lot of expertise brought to bear. So I don't understand why one would throw out. I believe that this goal, this creation of this action team in the plan is just exactly what you all have talked about. A couple of years ago, the staff put together for me a whole file on diking districts. And when one looks at the certainty of rising oceans and the possibility of other events that affect our water level, we are, as we know from our wetland studies and from, the original intent of diking districts was to help our farmers who are becoming actually more, I think, more economically steady in the county. Those diking districts are absolutely critical to controlling these water events and being able to do something that would help and encourage not only the management of those dikes, but also get in line to put some money into repairing some of those dikes. And so I guess I'm confused at the opposition to this. I'm very confused. I understand if you don't want to talk about moratoriums, fine, take them out, because maybe we probably need to do much more scientific work before we begin to declare moratoriums on things. But that was the whole intent of the creation of this action team. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a second. Just to clear up any confusion, I personally do not feel like we need to create an entire environmental quality action team in order to contract for an outside entity to do a study. And so whenever I see words like creating a team, I think with what staff, with what money, and how long are they going to be in action, and are we creating jobs? So frankly, I'm just looking at it from the minimalist perspective of how can we get the information that we're all needing and wanting at the most financially feasible method. And I will circle back to contracting with an outside entity, a neutral party, to assess either existing studies or to do a water analysis study. So that's just where I'm at.
Commissioner Thompson, then Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, what I hear is that we're all deeply concerned about these issues, water quality. We all want to see water and all of the other community services dealt with in a competent way. I see the division between objective scientific data and the natural human, I want to say requirement. It's how our brains operate. We perceive data that we believe to be true. So to the extent that as individuals or organizations, we approach an issue with a set of beliefs, we then perceive and report data that support our belief and believe that it's true. As elected officials, we have to balance and harmonize that, because people are passionately devoted to their individual well-being, their community well-being, and their planetary well-being. They have different ways of working that out, expressing it, and managing circumstances to make it happen. Here's our planning director, and we say, okay, Gail, fix this, please. Reconcile and harmonize what may be, what are certainly opposing points of view. So I think as we do this, to the extent that as commissioners, we can approach each other and look for the common ground to agree on the process that honors objective scientific data and people's natural propensity to be emotionally involved and perceive as fact, as true, the things that they already believe on how to care for the place they love. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, maybe we haven't been clear enough about what was intended for this action group. It was certainly assumed that at the moment, within our county budget constraints, there was probably no way that we could do this in-house. We simply don't have the staff. And this wasn't about hiring a consultant. There are many issues relating to water in this county, and I don't know of a professional who would be able to address them all. We were talking about things like judging the capacity of our present streams and aquifers. We were talking about being able to set up some kind of a monitoring system for streams that was particularly related to the survival of salmon. And those are very different kinds of expertise. Civil engineers, hydrologists, geologists, those are, one would have trouble finding all of those people even in a very large consulting firm. Those are different things. And somebody needs to set the agenda for what kind of information needs to be gotten. And there's a lot of work already out there. There have been studies done and are ongoing. So it's certainly, this was intended to be an actually pretty fast grab at knowledge about what our present physical conditions are. And I think that as the comp plan has emerged and become strengthened, it's very, very clear that we lack an awful lot of very, very important knowledge about our natural resources. And I agree that there are times when scientific analysis isn't always consistent, but by and large, these are pretty well developed professional experts who come forward with this sort of work. So I'm very sad because this was one of the most important things to emerge from our original strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Yeah, my only comment is I think environmental quality certainly is part of the equation. I don't know as it should be driving the process. And I think that when we're talking about these issues, I know there has been a lot of work that's been done and I want to work with the water districts and with the cities, and we talked about coordination quite a bit. Those need to be the drivers, I think, with this process going forward. It's, you know, when we're talking about the whole county, obviously this is a huge a huge area, and we're localized in many of these watersheds and basins, so it's multi-pronged. But I guess I'm just not convinced that having an environmental quality action team driving the process and then getting buy-in from our communities that we're doing this completely objectively is going to be reality. That's my comment. So, any other comments, questions? Gail, what can we leave you with here?
I think you've had a very good discussion, and we'll make some revisions. We will remove all references to the Falcon Cove moratorium. It sounded like the majority of the board, if I've listened correctly, would like to have the reference to the adopted strategic plan removed on pages 26 and 27. Is that correct? Did I understand correctly the takeaway from that? Okay.
Well, I think just a little bit more discussion on that. So Commissioner Thompson and Commissioner Webb.
I agree with Commissioner Webb that we need to integrate the latest scientific thinking. It was a different board that created this, so I think to pull it back to look at addressing it, but in a format that's agreeable to the sitting board and to all of our constituents insofar as possible. So the issue doesn't go away, but our methodology for engaging it shifts. So I'm not erasing it. I'm just saying take this out and substitute something else that'll work better.
And then Commissioner Webb and then Commissioner Bain.
Yeah, I guess I'm disappointed. This is something that I had certainly hoped was going to start happening pretty soon. And it was to be a very inclusive process. It wasn't, I mean, we had talked about how, you know, what the makeup of bringing all, you know, folks together to do this work. And you know, I am starting to get an awful lot of feedback from constituents about the fact that in our comp plan process, even though we began with the mandate, I thought, to give the process, to make climate change a large priority for the comp plan process. And these are imminent issues that we need to start addressing right now, and not put off to another time. You know, in our previous discussions, we were talking about the need to coordinate fully with our cities. Wow, water is a big issue when we're talking about urbanization. And it's something we've got to understand sooner than 5 years from now or 3 years from now, that we need to start working on it right away. I think this is another one of those emergencies. And then to say, just because it came from a previous board, well, what, does that make it not valid? I still haven't heard any discussion from this board about what is wrong with putting together some kind of an initiative like this. What's the deal?
And I think I had my comment, and it was clear I didn't believe that we were ignoring this. I think that we do want this to be addressed. I just had the issue about how we were addressing it. And that's frankly my opinion. I think that we've done work in the past. I'd like to review some of that and know exactly what has been done and work closely with our cities and water districts. I absolutely believe they are integral in this process. And I know we've heaped a lot on staff. So if there are opportunities to engage a consultant to do this review and be involved in driving the process, which that's frankly where I am at, that would be my preference.
That was the intention.
Okay.
That was the intention when the proposal was made. That was entirely the intention. So.
Well, and I guess that's my confusion on what the environmental quality action team really is. What's their purpose? I guess that's my confusion. Commissioner Banks.
I agree with both you and Commissioner Thompson. Moving forward, water quality, water is important to our constituents, to our community. Available water is important. Water levels are important. All of these things are important. It's the methodology of which we're basically attacking a topic. The methodology, I believe, is, again, I agree with Commissioner Wela in regards to, we've heaped a lot on our staff, and anytime that we can bring in an outside consultant to do a water analysis, that's a great idea. And as he's mentioned before, we've already had one done. I don't know how recent that was. But when we're talking about county plans, it's what is under the umbrella of the county to assist, to help facilitate. And when I think about that, I think about our water districts. How can we help assist or help facilitate? And so, I feel like we need to just narrow our scope of focus to the things that we can assist and facilitate and control. And I don't want to step outside of our box and into the realm of other state agencies and biologists who that is their job. That is their forte. That is what they're paid to do. And so I think as a county, we just need to be careful to not reach out and try to do more things or repeat things that are already done by other agencies. I don't feel like that's a good time management or good financial management. And so, that's why I circle back to, I agree. Water is important. It's just, it's the methodology of which we approach the subject that I disagree with. So.
And thank you, Commissioner Banks. And I appreciate this discussion. Everybody's had an opportunity to kind of share their opinion. This has been a robust discussion, and I know that Gail probably didn't get the direction clear as she wanted, but I do have to ask our county manager as far as time here. I have a hard stop at 12, and I know we have an executive session. Is that executive session going to take, I guess, do we have any idea how long that will last?
Well, Chair Cuellar, what I would say is that we will take as much time as the board has available, and we will fit it into your schedule. And if we need to then reschedule some additional time at a future meeting, we can do that. So.
Okay.
Or the other option, Chair, Chair, is that we just defer this executive session to another time. So it's up to your board what you might want to do.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
If we can get it done, let's get it done. Shall we try?
The executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and then adjourn our work session at this time. And I will go ahead and read the script here for the executive session. The Clatsop County Board of Commissioners will now meet in executive session